Well, I'm hoping everyone can see me and hear me. It's nice to see everyone tonight. It is a beautiful night. I do think I have the Facebook and YouTube connected properly this evening. I think both services are connected. They are. So if you're here on Facebook and YouTube, just drop me a little note to say you're here and let me know where you're watching from, because I always like to know where everyone is. And hello. Oh, we have lots of people on Zoom tonight. Excellent. Excellent. Thank you. Oh, I see. Oh, the McCabe's are here. Mrs. Healy's here. Excellent.
That's
Beautiful night.
right.
As you can see, I'm still growing my hair out. My hair is still growing for that July 9th event that I hope everyone in the New York City area is going to get to. Our wonderful July 9th event. Hello from Indiana. Is anybody there? Does anybody care? I care. So July 9th here in New York City, I will be joining up with a number of my friends here from Colonial New York to reenact the great event of the reading of the Declaration of Independence and destruction of the statue of King George III. And tickets are available to that at francistavernmuseum.org. Hey, balance my bonnet out here. So that's francistavernmuseum.org on the events page. And you can pick up tickets there. And I hope that lots of you will come out to see me in person that night. Joining us that night are going to be lots of other great living history interpreters who will be playing all kinds of characters from the year 1776, from ladies, gentlemen, sons of liberty, soldiers, all kinds of people. And of course, His Excellency General George Washington will be there to speak to all of us. And you'll have an opportunity to interact with all of the people on the tour as the tour goes on. And there will also be people within the audience dressed up in period attire that you'll be free to speak to as well. It's going to be a great immersive experience. And of course, we will be ending at Francis Tavern, where we will be toasting His Excellency the Commander. So I hope you'll all come out to see us. It's going to be a wonderful event. The first of its kind. I hope it works. If it works out well, we'll be doing some more like this. I'm going to apologize right off to everyone and tell you that I have a bit of a cold tonight. So if I lose my voice, please excuse me. And I am committed to do a tour tomorrow as Mrs. Q. So I'm going to try to not stay on too long tonight, but still give you the full story of what we want to talk about. And that is that odious event in the summer of 1776, when New York City's loyalists attempted to assassinate the Commander-in-Chief, General George Washington. Let's see. Oh, we have a lot of people here from everywhere. This is great. Oh, we have a bunch of people from Fredericksburg. Well, hello, Fredericksburg. We have people here, many people from Fredericksburg. This is great. Oh, wow. Ellen saw a memorial today. I should say Mrs. Healy, since we're being proper, saw a memorial today to Private John Coryell, who died on the Jersey in Wallabout Bay in December 1776. Wow.
Yeah.
Quite something to see. Wow.
And there's another one listed with him in the cemetery that's, he says he's spy, a Holcomb, who was a spy for Washington. It was cool.
Wow. I was just doing some research for someone else earlier this week about some spies that were based in Staten Island. So I'll look up Mr. Holcomb, as I just have acquired a lot of new papers about the spying that I wasn't aware of before. So I'll take a look at that and see if I can find out something about him. So a little bit of background and what was happening in the summer of 1776 in New York. Of course, we are preparing for war, for invasion on the part of the English. And General Washington is in the city of New York on the lower tip of Manhattan Island, and the army is pouring in and joining him. So that will be his Continentals and a number of militia and rifleman units from around the colonies. Yes, that was for Miss Langdon. I was talking about Mr. Mercereau. We were talking about Mr. Mercereau from Staten Island. So I'll be looking a little bit more into the duties he performed as a spy. And he was, by the way, spying in the summer of 1776, when Washington's troops were in New York and General Howe's troops were in his home, Staten Island. So he was sending out information about how many troops were in Staten Island, what were English, what were Hessians, and what was up in the British camp on Staten Island, which of course you can guess was vital information. I can't get my bonnet straight or it's going to really annoy me. So let's work out my bonnet a little bit. So in the summer of 1776, we are preparing for war. Washington is in New York City with his army. General Howe is on Staten Island with his army. Admiral Richard Howe is in the harbor and surrounding waterways with the Royal Navy. So you can see things are very tense, and there are a lot of nefarious plots about, as you can imagine. Lots of rumors, lots of false stories, lots of things spreading around the town, with each side trying to spread some disinformation to get the other side on the wrong footing, obviously leading to what everyone knows is going to be a major battle. Now, out in the harbor, and an island that you would know is Liberty Island, where the Statue of Liberty is located in your time. In my time is an island called Bedloe's Island. And anchored next to Bedloe's Island is a big, I think, 26-gun ship called the Duchess of Gordon, HMS Duchess of Gordon, where you can find our royal governor, Tryon, and for a time, our royal mayor, David Matthews. A year prior, about a year and a half before, when we got news of Lexington and Concord, those gentlemen were driven out of the city and have been living out on the ship since that time. So there are rumors that they are passing information from that ship to the British, of course, and both gentlemen have intimate knowledge of the layout of the city and surrounding areas, and are passing information to the British on how best to invade and take the city and surrounding areas. So they are out on the Duchess of Gordon. Now, on June 21st, a plot was discovered that included both Governor Tryon and David Matthews, and that plot was to assassinate the commander-in-chief. And not only to assassinate the commander-in-chief, but there's far more mischief involved in this plot than just that. Now, the way they figured out this plot was that there was a gunsmith involved in Mr. Gilbert Forbes, who operated on the lower Broadway right across the street from Hull's Tavern, which would be about 18 Broadway today, or around where you might know the Charging Bull is located. So right around there. Let me see, we have some other notes here. I just want to take a look at them. So Mr. Forbes was somehow, someone found out that he was a part of this plot. Now, a number of loyalists or Tories in the area had sworn an oath of allegiance to England. They all swore in front of each other. They even wrote the oath and signed their names to it. And these are going to turn out to be the parties who will be involved in this plot. And they have sworn themselves to do anything in their power to aid the British in their taking of New York, their successful conquest of New York. Now, it was debatable for a long time what role Mayor Matthews really had in this plot, as it seemed that maybe he was only what you might call the money man, or the go-between, carrying the money from the Duchess of Gordon and Governor Tryon to the gunsmith, Mr. Forbes, who then distributed it among the other conspirators. But it took quite a long time to really determine who was whom in this plot and what exactly had transpired. So there were many rumors about who was involved and what their actual role in the plot was. Now, Forbes was arrested, and he was threatened with execution, brought before our provincial assembly or our provincial Congress, and interviewed. And he was interviewed by two great New Yorkers, Mr. Alexander McDougall and Mr. Hercules Mulligan, who I was not aware were part of this until I looked up the actual minutes of those hearings today and saw their names on the minutes. So that was quite fun to see that Mrs. McDougall and Mulligan were both present and questioned Mr. Forbes. Well, they produced another conspirator in this whole plot, a Mr. Collier, who said right before everybody that yes, Mr. Forbes was the man who arranged everything and who was distributing the money to everybody, and that it was Forbes who was the arranger of all the events that was going on. Now, he also implicated Governor Tryon and Mayor Matthews, as well as a number of members of Washington's Life Guard. And the closest thing I could think of in your time to compare Washington's Life Guard to be might be the Secret Service, which protects the president. Oh, Spokane, Washington. Well, all the way on the other coast. Thank you for joining us tonight. Of course, at my time, I wouldn't know that exists, but I guess my modern me knows where Spokane, Washington is. And so, so the lifeguard would be the closest men to General Washington. Now, the lifeguard were selected by Washington's various commanders, and they were ordered to be men of the highest moral character and commitment to the cause. They were all expected to also be tall, 5'10" and higher. So they were all large gentlemen, and they were all, without question, loyal men of high esteem, good character, and were recommended by their commanders for these roles. And people cycled in and out of Washington's lifeguard. They served for a time and then were replaced by other gentlemen. So these would have been the men most committed to the defense of the commander. And a number of these men were implicated in this plot. Shockingly, their names were brought up as well. And one of them was a Captain Thomas Hickey, one of Washington's most trusted lifeguards. Well, as I mentioned, these conspirators had all taken an oath of loyalty to each other that they would never give each other up. But apparently, when they were faced with the hanging rope, they began to talk. And some of them gave up others in this plot and their roles. Now, Mayor Matthews has also been implicated in having sent military intelligence of Washington's military preparedness off to another warship in the Hudson River called the Asia. And of course, the Asia would then pass that information on to General and Admiral Howe. So Mayor Matthews was already implicated in passing on vital military information to the enemy. Now, Matthews, once he found out he was implicated in this plot, took off and was hiding out in Brooklyn for a time. Now, the plan itself was to, upon hearing, getting word that it was time to, carry out the plan, to simultaneously assassinate Washington and his general officers around him, blow up all of the powder magazines, spike the cannon, and destroy the King's Bridge, the only bridge connecting our island of New York to the mainland at the northern end of the island in the area called the King's Bridge crossing. So all of that was to be done when the Royal Navy arrived into the upper harbor near to the battery in order to provide them with a decided advantage for their invasion of the town. So that was the whole plan. And luckily, the Royal Navy had not yet arrived. It'll still be a couple weeks until they make their big arrival into the upper harbor. Now, Washington's aide-de-camp, General Samuel Webb, wrote to a friend. He said, "Thank God they are discovered, with many of them in close custody, where I hope they will receive the punishment due such infamous wretchedness." And another gentleman, a Lieutenant Colonel Caleb Clapp, left his regiment in New York, where he traveled to the north to bring information to the north. And he wrote, "At evening, the mayor of the city of New York was taken up, and a number of the citizens, with 3 of Washington's lifeguard and some others, numbering about 40 in total, arrested." Well, on June 23rd, Mayor Matthews tries to flee, but he is captured in Brooklyn near Flatbush while running through a field. You imagine the mayor running through a field out in Flatbush, Brooklyn at night trying to escape. But the New York Mercury reports he was dragged out of bed at midnight by an officer and 20 men belonging to the rebel army, but other accounts say he was captured while escaping through a field. Either one of those is quite amusing to imagine, either him being dragged out of bed at midnight or captured running away in a field. And of course, we all would like to believe that Tories are all ridiculous cowards, and that it's much more likely he was captured running away through the field than in his bed asleep. They were brought up on charges, and the charges were dangerous designs and treasonable conspiracies against the rights and liberties of the United States of America. Now, Matthews was eventually, Mayor Matthews eventually moved to a jail in Connecticut, where he escaped the following year in 1777. He then served with the British until 1782, the end of the war. So that will be that for Mayor Matthews. Governor Tryon, as many of you know, is going to stay out on the Duchess of Gordon. And once the town is taken by the British at the end of 1776, will continue out for a time as our royal governor until he's replaced by military governors. Captain Thomas Hickey, though, on the 26th of June, was tried by a general court-martial, found guilty of attempting to assassinate his commander, and sentenced to death. And on June 28th, he was hanged by order of Commander General George Washington. Now, he was hanged, incredibly, at Richmond Hill, which was where Washington's encampment was. Now, you might know that Richmond Hill, or the mansion there at Richmond Hill, in your time, the West Village, is going to go on to be the future home of Vice President John and Mrs. Abigail Adams, as well as later the home of Vice President Aaron Burr and his lovely daughter, Theodosia. So that area has quite an interesting history as these years go by. And Thomas Hickey was hanged near there. And Washington issued a general order upon the hanging of Thomas Hickey that I'm going to read to you. It's somewhat long, but I think you'll find it very amusing, and you'll get some insight into the commander's feelings about this whole event. And in it, he says, "The unhappy fate of Thomas Hickey, executed this day for mutiny, sedition, and treachery, the general hopes will be a warning to every soldier in the army to avoid those crimes and all others so disgraceful to the character of a soldier and pernicious to this country, and pernicious to this country, whose pay he receives and bread he eats. And in order to avoid those crimes, the most certain method is to keep out of the temptation of them, and particularly, listen to this, to avoid lewd women, lewd women who, by the dying confession of this poor criminal, first led him into practices which ended in an untimely and ignominious death." Well, I wonder who exactly those lewd women were. Although it is true that throughout that summer, the commander did have ongoing problems with his officers spending a great deal of time in the brothels located in the Holy Ground, that area along the Hudson River between St. Paul's Chapel and Trinity Church. So much trouble, as a matter of fact, that when they came out to defend the island against two warships that went up the Hudson River to test the defenses, when they manned the cannon along the Hudson River, they were unable to hit one of those ships, and they missed with every fire and even misfired some of the cannon, as many of them were so hungover or still drunk from the nights before. So this was an ongoing issue that Washington had with the brothels. I do think that the commander even approached the leadership of Trinity Church, which, by the way, owned all of the land upon which those brothels sat, and collected rent from them. Very interesting way of the Church of England to make some money when you think about it. I believe Washington approached Trinity Church and asked them to please shut down the brothels, and they refused, claiming that it, would lead to, financial instability in the town, because so much money was made in the brothels. I guess that fed, so many different people's income. And there were also taverns there and gambling houses and things like that. But this was an ongoing problem with Washington. But I think maybe on July 9th, when I have an opportunity to interview the general, we are going to be talking a bit about the Hickey plot, and I might ask him to elaborate on him placing the blame on the lewd women of this town. And I just may ask him which lewd women he meant by that. So, you might want to make sure you're there on July 9th. It might prove to be a very interesting conversation between me and the general. And I'll tell you that the general is very used to me being forthright with my questions. And sometimes asking him questions that others might not be brave enough to answer, or should I say bold enough to answer. But the general and I are old friends, and he is used to me stepping out of the normal boundaries of a lady of my time. So he generally answers them with good humor. So I may just ask him about these lewd women on July 9th when I have that opportunity to. So thus is the tale of Thomas Hickey, who was executed in June of 1776 for his attempt to assassinate his commander, General George Washington. And as you can imagine, there were many nefarious plots going on that year to kidnap the general, to assassinate the general, to poison the general, and as well to do those things to the other side, plots to sink the Duchess of Gordon, plots to get aboard and poison the governor. There was even at one time an order to go out to the Duchess of Gordon and arrest the governor, which I think it was that embarrassment to the American military that summer, General Charles Lee, who had been ordered to go out and arrest Governor Tryon on the Duchess of Gordon, who said that he could not arrest Governor Tryon because he was the royal governor appointed by the king. Tell me, was Charles Lee a commander in the Continental Army or in the English Army? Where were his loyalties? Did he not understand that at that point we were not honoring royal appointments? Had he gone out as commanded to the Duchess of Gordon and arrested Governor Tryon, things may have been much easier for General Washington that summer of 1776. But then Charles Lee got what he deserved, didn't he? He was arrested at an inn, tavern, maybe brothel in northern New Jersey by none other than Colonel Bannister Tarleton. Some of these things, the way they play out, they're just better than fiction. Someone has asked me to explain to the general that I'm a bit of a time traveler. Oh, the general understands that. Thank you, Ms. Sturgis. The general understands that about me. I must say that he is very patient with me and very tolerant of my boldness, as we have been friends now for many years. And he usually knows when I arrive to speak to him to expect the unexpected, as we might say. So there may be some unexpected conversations on that tour that evening. I don't want to give too much of it away. Not all of it has been pre-planned, by the way, so not all of the conversation is scripted. So we may have some surprising events occur. Back to that fun little tidbit that General Charles Lee was captured by Bannister Tarleton while he was visiting a tavern or inn or a brothel, and there with some sort of lady. So I think that's somewhat justice for General Charles Lee. Unfortunately for us, he was returned to us in a prisoner exchange and then ran away at the Battle of Monmouth, New Jersey, didn't he? He ran away at Monmouth, was leaving the battle, and coming to the battle was General Washington and his men, and he sees the coward Charles Lee running away. So, enough of Charles Lee, definitely not what we needed. And after that, I must give His Excellency credit for turning to his younger, more innovative thinking generals in most respects after seeing that Charles Lee was, a bit of a, shall we say, fool at that time. There are other worse words I could use, but I can't use them here. Not in my 18th century parlance, but there are some worse words Mrs. Q might, use in the company of her friend Mrs. R or Mrs. B, but definitely not with all of you. So let me know if you have any questions. I'm looking over here to see if there are any. I don't see any, but it's great to see people on both Facebook and YouTube joining us as our little Friday night salons spread and become more popular. I am next week or the week after, I am going to try to get my other good friend, Mr. Benjamin Franklin, to join us and talk about a number of different issues. So I'm going to be speaking to him this week to see if he can join us next Friday or the Friday after. Was Charles Lee related to Robert E. Lee? Oh no, you Virginians out there, do you know which Lees are which Lees, because I surely do not. The Lees of Virginia are like the Livingstons of New York and the Clintons. And I, I don't know if you remember, but we had General Clintons on both sides of the war. We had General Sir Henry Clinton on the English side and General George Clinton from New York on the American side. It was not unusual to have men of the same name on both sides. In that case, those Clintons were not related, but I do not know about the Lees. Now, I know the Lees of Virginia were the descendants of Robert E. Lee, and specifically, and tell me if I have the wrong one, was it Light Horse Harry in the Revolutionary War, who was Robert E. Lee's father? A very mysterious thing to my 20th century self when I was learning, because it seemed very strange to me that someone could be old enough to fight in the Revolutionary War, yet have a son in the Civil War, Robert E. Lee. I thought Light Horse Harry must have been very old when he had Robert E., but that wasn't true at all. It was the other way, that he was very young when he was a commander in the Revolutionary War. And I think, did he have like 7 or 8 children? He had a whole bunch, including Robert E. Lee. But as I said, the Lees of Virginia are extremely confusing to keep track of. And for that, I would have to defer to a true Virginian to expound upon that, as I, as a New Yorker, am still barely able to keep the Livingstons straight myself. The Livingstons, the Schuylers, the Van Rensselaers, and the Jays is quite enough for my mind to juggle without adding in the Lees. Now, I think in your time, there is a musical about the Declaration of Independence, since we're coming up in July, called 1776. And isn't there a song in that musical making fun of the many Lees of Virginia? I think there is. I think there's also a song that laughs at how many Livingstons there are, but I do think they poke fun regularly in the musical at the many Lees of Virginia. Mrs. Healy says that's a great song, and the play it is, right? The Lees of Virginia. Definitely, absolutely, and some of the other Lee ending words that they use to make it rhyme. It's a quite fun song. And if you've never seen that musical, I highly recommend it, as we are coming up on Independence Day. San Antonio, Texas, yes. Richard Henry Lee was poked fun at also. I think Richard Henry Lee was the character in 1776, right, who actually sang the song about all of the Lees. Exceptional Lee. It was a wonderful song and a wonderful musical too. I guess at your time they're musicals, in my time they're operas or musical performances or whatever. Let's see if we have any other questions. So thank you all for joining me tonight. Since I have this little bit of a cold, and I will be walking guests around our fine city tomorrow afternoon, I am going to make it a little short tonight so that I can get some rest. Fort Myers, Florida. Florida. My goodness, what a long way away. Charles Lee was an immigrant from England. Well, I suppose that was his problem then. Here a Lee, there a Lee. That's right. Here a Lee, there a Lee, verily, exceptionally, definitely. So, some good fun. So I see some of you know that song. I think my favorite song in that musical, 1776, is the one where they're all trying to get each other to write the Declaration of Independence. Is my favorite song, where they're all passing it along, and finally it winds up in the hands of Thomas Jefferson to do it. Not a bad result, I don't think. So that the musical. So again, thank you. And oh, the Delanceys. Well, maybe one night I'll speak about the Delanceys. I did post a little thingy about them on social media. Oh no, I'm sorry. It's scheduled for tomorrow. Tomorrow I'm posting on social media about Delancey Street and McDougal Street. So, you'll see a little bit about that tomorrow. I do some of these ahead of time so that on a day that I have to go out and do a tour, I don't have to get up in the morning, post social media, put on my outfit and everything. It makes it a little easier for me. So I hope to be seeing all of you on July 9th. where we can all get together in person. And for those of you who can't join us July 9th, of course, we have our Friday meetings like this. And I am also looking for a date where I'm going to redo that lecture I did about Theodosia and Aaron Burr for the Freemasons. So I am going to be redoing that lecture one evening in the coming couple of weeks, and I'll let you know when. And of course, you'll be able to join me in various medium and hear the wonderful story about Theodosia Burr and her radical father, Aaron. And of course, we'll be talking more about Aaron in his personal life and not his political life, because the whole political thing is very complex. Regards to Mr. Q. Mr. Q is out acquiring lumber for a project. We will see what that is. I'm sure he's building something in the yard, and I don't know what. It would be lovely if it was an arbor or something for the grapevine that's growing back there, but I have a feeling it likely will not be. That it will be something manly that he will be building out there. Something that perhaps I will be horrified when I see. So I don't know, but he's out getting lumber, but I will pass on his regards to everyone. So thank you all for joining me. I'll see you next Friday. If you have a question for Mr. Franklin, please email them to me or post them on social media. And I will be sure to get the questions to Mr. Franklin in advance, as I'm sure he will be joining us 1 week in the future, if not next week, the following week. So thank you all very much. Have a wonderful week, and I'll see you next Friday. Have a great week. Thank you, everyone.